Hello everyone, Garrett here. Today we are going to be looking at how to model a neck in Rhino. So if you watched my how to model a guitar body video, this one is quite a bit more complicated, so I will say it's going to be nice if you have a pretty good understanding of surfacing before we get into this too much. That being said, I think we should get through this fairly quickly, but it will take more time than the last video. You'll see I also have a neck already. This video series is going to come in multiple parts because there are multiple different kinds of necks. So today we're going to be looking at the Stratocaster style neck, which has the headstock parallel to the rest of the neck. In a different video, we'll be going over a scarf joint neck where the neck is at an angle. But today, I figured this is most popular. This goes with Strat necks, Telecaster necks. So I think this should be most useful to everyone. You'll notice I already have a baseline of the model here, and I'm not actually going to show you guys how to do this because it's not too hard. I'll pop on our dimensions here. These are the dimensions for the neck that we'll be modeling today. The reason I'm not showing you guys how to do this is because every neck is different and your dimensions might be different than this. This is more so going to teach you the techniques that will be used to do a neck, but if you want to copy these dimensions, this is what they are. You can see it tapers from the bottom to the top on both directions, and that's how wide it is. So I will turn that off now. Also, you can see we already have a headstock. This isn't too hard to do. All you have to see up here, you see I have background bitmap. If you pop that on, you can scroll through your pictures, and if you just save a picture of a diagram of the neck you want, as long as it's parallel to the guitar body, you can trace right over it and you'll have it right there. You'll notice we have this other line here. This one's really important and you guys don't want to mess this up. So this line goes underneath the other one that we did. Okay, so you can see it's the bottom part of the headstock. You'll also notice this line always stays within the line of the top one here. So you can see that black line is inside the yellow line, and that's what you want. Another thing that's also really important when you're drawing this part of it up is you need to make sure that the bottom of this curve right here touches where your neck ends. So you see this line right here and this line intersect right there. And that is extremely important, and you need to make sure you have that. One more thing I'm going to touch on before we get to other parts of the neck. When you draw your headstock, one thing you need to do before we continue is when you have these curves that line up to the neck, you're going to want to run a command called match. So when you do match, it'll say select curve to change. So what this does is it takes the lines from your neck and matches it up with the lines in the headstock. So you get a nice continued curve in here, so there's not going to be any creases when we get to this tricky transition in a little bit. Okay, so basically you'll want to select this one and select right here to match it. And do that on both sides, and we should be good to go for the headstock. The only other things I'm going to point out here is we need a couple rings. These are really easy to do. You go over here to your standard. There, if you click this little triangle in the bottom of the circle, you find this one right here that says circle 3 points. And so basically what you do is you click either side of the neck there, and then you're going to draw a line from the bottom of the neck box to the midpoint right there. So it'll make a circle, and then we can just trim the top part of that away, and you end up with these nice curves to the bottom of the neck. So you want to do that at the beginning, at the end. You'll see I have a rectangle here. This is 3 inches up the neck, and you want to draw a little cross section there and then make your curve. The reason for this is the heel of the neck that's going to go into that pocket on your guitar. We'll be getting to this in a later video. What we're really focused on today is getting the main part of the neck and that transition into the head. Alright, so let's start actually modeling this neck, shall we? So, first thing we're going to want to do, assuming we already have all of our setup done already, we're going to want to take our headstock right here, and we're just going to drop that down 1/4 of an inch so we have something that looks like this. I'm going to move my other neck out of the way real quick so you can get a good picture of the one we're actually working on here. So you can see that our neck is dropped down, which is what the Stratocaster necks look like. So the first thing we need to do is build this little transition that goes up towards the top of the neck. So this isn't too hard. Basically, we're going to grab a circle from the center, and we're going to want to put it right down there to the top of our headstock. Okay, so once we have our circle there, we're going to run a move command, and we're going to want to move our circle from this quad right here to the end. I should mention on our object snaps over here, you will want quad on because we're going to do quite a bit with circles. So having the quad on is going to be very helpful for us here. And then, so we have, you can see that transition starting to take shape there. So we're going to grab our trim command and just select these two curves here. So those are our cutting objects, and then we can just trim the rest of that away. So now you can see we have this transition here. The next thing we're going to want to do is run a extrude command and turn on your both sides and make sure that this crosses both sides of the neck there, and then we can delete that curve that we just made. We don't need that anymore. And now what we're going to do is run a project command. So we're going to want to project the top curve here, and we're going to want to project it onto that extruded surface that we just made. So now if we delete that surface, you can see we have that transition that we wanted. So that's great. So we can just grab our trim command again. These will be our cutting objects. And we can just trim those parts that we don't need away now. So we have that nice upward sweep to it while maintaining the curve from the top. So that's cool. Alright, so step 2 here. So this one is not too bad. We want to run a sweep to command from this cross-section curve to our one at the end here. And of course we have to select our rails first. So I already have this split to where our other one is, which is actually fine. So this is 2 inches back from the top of our neck. So if you just want to make your cross-section box here like we did before and just draw that in there. So our first 2 rails will be these, and we'll just grab our cross sections here. And there you go. That's the base of the neck there. Alright, so next we're going to get into kind of the tricky part of this, but it's not going to be too bad yet. You're going to want to grab the bottom of the base of the neck that we just drew and grab that center circle and bring it up to the top like this. So once you have this going, you're going to want to grab that trim command. Our circle is the cutting object, and we can trim away that part of the neck, and we don't need that circle anymore, so we can just delete it as well. So now you see we got this kind of interesting curve, right? So we'll be getting back to this a little bit later on, but this is the main thing that's going to help us make that smooth transition. The next thing we'll want to do is grab the bottom of your headstock and run an extrude curve command and bring that up towards the top. I have both sides on. We're going to turn that off. Okay, so now that we have this, we are going to want to explode it, and we don't need any of this part. Okay, so as you can see here, we had a straight section that came down into a curve. like this. At the end of the curve, right here, where it starts to become straight, that's where we want to start deleting. Same thing over here. See, it came down to a curve, and then we started that curve that transitions into our neck. We want to start deleting there. So both curves that transition into our neck should not have any surfaces on them. Okay, so the next thing we are going to want to do here, this is where it starts to get a little tricky. So as you can see right here, we have that curve that transitions and sweeps upwards into the neck. So we're going to run a new command here called arc blend. This is a very useful tool, and we'll be using it a lot later. So basically what this does is it creates a nice curve that transitions between two other curves. So to start, we want to grab the curve that is on top of the neck but ends right where we cut away with our circle. And then we are going to want to grab the part of the curve from the headstock so we had this one that sweeps up here. It will be the next curve, so not that one. It'll be this one right here. That curve, and you have to select it near the end that you want. So we selected right there, and we'll select this curve right there. And that will create, as you can see on the side view, it creates a really nice curve that flows great. Now the only problem with that is it is, as you can see, kind of crazy from the top view. It goes like way into our neck. We don't want that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to grab the other portion of the top of the neck and that curve that swept up into the neck. So we'll join those, and then we're going to run an extrude curve command, and we're going to want to drop that down, and then we're going to use that project command again. So we're going to want to project that curve onto that surface that we just made. Great. We can delete the initial curve that we did and that surface because we don't need that anymore. So look what we got now. We got a curve that still has that nice side view, but it also follows the top view as well. Cool, right? So later we'll get into filling that in. But we're also going to want to do that to the other side as well. So now that we know how to do it, it's not going to be hard. Just an arc blend from here to here. Makes a nice curve there. Grab these two, join them. So sometimes I found when I do this, there is sometimes an issue where when you're extruding these downwards, it will give you a error message that says it will create an invalid surface. It's a really annoying one when you're trying to extrude these downward. Not sure why it happens, but sometimes it does. So if that happens to you, there's a pretty easy way around it. We're just going to want to copy paste these two curves here. And then for some reason this version of Rhino is very slow. But then we'll basically just drag that one straight down with our gumball tool. I really like having that on. It makes things a lot more easy, I guess. And then we'll just loft these curves. So we can loft those two, and it will create that line that goes straight down. And then we can just project our lines. So project this line onto this surface, and then we can come down here and delete our old one, and there you go. Alright, so for our next portion of this, we're going to want to grab a line and go from the intersection, the middle, at the bottom of our neck at the top, and bring it straight down to the quad of the bottom of our headstock. And that's why I said it's so important to make sure that this lines up properly. As you can see, the line goes straight down there at that intersection. Then we're going to want to grab this and bring it to the middle of the bottom of our neck. After you've done that, we can take a curve line. We can go from our neck there to the midpoint of that line that we drew there, and then we will connect this up right here at the bottom of that curve of the headstock. So as you can see, this connects up straight here and ends not at a rounded point like a fillet would, but it kind of comes to a crease there, which is actually good for later, because with these fender style necks, we're actually going to want to add a fillet all the way around this afterwards. So for the next step, this one really varies on your guitar neck. This might be a little bit of trial and error, just depending on the shape you have at the bottom. But this is why it's important to have that line, and you make sure it is inside these other lines, and you'll see why right now. So basically what we're going to be doing here is making more cross sections for this sweep that we're going to do eventually. So what we're going to do is you want to grab somewhere that's in the middle of these curves. Lucky for me, I happen to have an endpoint right here, so I'm going to use that. And you want it to end at the end of this line right here. So you should have an endpoint right there. That's where you want it to end. Same thing on the other side here. I have an endpoint there. We'll see if it works. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We'll just have to find out. So now that you have those, we want to run an extend command. So the first one, it says select boundary objects. We don't need boundary objects, actually. We just need to select the curve to extend, and you just extend it a little bit up. Well, you'll see why soon. But this part's easy. We just have to extend those curves upwards. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to want to grab another line, put it to the bottom of the first line that we drew, and go straight down with it. Same thing for the other line that we drew. That's going to go straight down as well. Now we can split those lines that we extended. So objects to split is going to be these two lines here. Cutting objects will be our headstock. And as you can see now, we can grab the middle of those and delete it. You might be asking, why are we doing that? Well, going back to our good old friend ArcBlend, and you know how it works by now. We'll select the two ends, and we'll get this nice kind of curve that connects both sides. Why we're doing this is we want to make sure that our bottom is parallel, or the bottom of the side of the neck is parallel to the bottom of the headstock. So now we can delete all those other extra lines that we don't need anymore. So at this point, we are pretty much set up to run the big sweep command, and hopefully it goes well for us. So let's make sure we have everything set up the way we need to for this to work. So we need to duplicate an edge right here and here. Okay, so once you've duplicated that edge, we're going to want to go and select our arc blend that we did earlier and join those two together. So we have that all as one line. We got this line on the bottom here that has a slight curve to it. We have this here. We can actually split this, and we're going to need to. So let's select our objects to split, just that, and our cutting objects here. Alright, so now that we have it flipped over and we can see what we're doing, we're going to want to run that sweep to command. Our rails are going to be this one and this one. And then our cross-section curves will be here and here. So now you can see we have that section highlighted. Let's do that sweep command. You do not want to maintain height on. I'll show you what that does. It makes this odd little bump right there, which we don't want. So we don't want to maintain the height there. Everything else is looking good though, so we can say okay on that. And I'll put it in here to rendered. You can see that is looking nice and smooth. We can run that other sweep to command really quick to finish this one side. Here's our rails, and I'll just select our cross-section curves there. There's the rest of it, and now when I go back to rendered, you can see that is a nice smooth transition from the side of our neck, or the side of the headstock, to the side of the neck. So that's great. Now that we know how to do it, let's go ahead and go to the other side here, which I need to go through here and join these much like we did with the other ones, and we'll need to split that part of the headstock off. Okay, so now we can run our sweep to command. So we'll select our rails, there, and there, and our cross-section curves. And as you can see, we end up with something that is pretty much identical to the other side. Let's make sure that transitions nicely, and it does. So this is going great. Now we just have to connect it up to the other side here. So sweep to, here's our rails, here's our cross-section curves. Great. And so now we can go back, select the portions that we split away from the headstock before, join those back up, run a planar SRF command. That'll create that, and look at that. That looks familiar, doesn't it? It looks like a strap neck to me. So we just have to do a few things to finish this up. So first of all, let's get the other side of the headstock done. So we'll go to our intersections where we did that circle at the beginning of this thing. These right here, where that ends, we'll want to connect both of those sides together. We can run a sweep to command. Here's our rails. Here's our cross-section curves, which we'll want to actually explode these now before we do that, so we don't end up with more than we need. So sweep to, there's our rails, and there's our cross-section curves. That creates that little surface right there. And then we're going to want to duplicate some edges. So we'll grab the end of this right here, along with the rest of the top of our headstock. Great. And we join all those up into one thing. We should be able to run a planar SRF on that again. That command only works if this line that we just made there is straight across all the way on our side view there, on one plane, as the name suggests. Okay, now that we've done that, the only thing left to do here is grab this curve right here. We're going to want to split that curve by that line right there. Let's see, objects to split, that curve, cutting objects, that curve, boom, two pieces. So now that we have this right here, we can extrude that curve up, and we can select our trim tool. Cutting objects will be these two here, and we can just split that away. Look at that, it looks good, doesn't it? We'll do the same thing over here. So split, grab that line, cutting objects right there, curve, extrude curve. Awesome. So let's just trim that away real quick. Cutting objects and trim it away. Look at that. So now let's just finish off this portion of the neck and we'll call it a day here. Everything else is going to be super easy here. So now if we grab that and that curve right there, join those up. Again with the planar SRF. There you go. So your fretboard sits on top of this piece here, and then you have the heel of the neck. So if I select all of this, I will just press join on that. I said that because I have dimensions here. And then if I wanted to, I could just do the cap command and it finishes it off. So that's the hard part of the neck done. We'll get to this in another video because some people might do a neck through guitar. You might have a bolt-on neck. We'll be looking at both of those in later videos, but we definitely got the hardest part done. So I'll go into the rendered view here. I hope this helped you guys out. This is the easiest way I could find out how to do it. Not sure if maybe there's a better way out there, but if there is, I don't know about it. This works pretty well for me, and as you can see, it looks great. Later on, when we get into the finishing touches, we would put a fillet around this edge here, but we don't need to do that right now. We just wanted to see how to get that surface. So if you stuck around this long, please put a thumbs up on this video. I spent a really long time trying to figure out how to do this in a concise way for you guys. I know you guys have been requesting it for a really long time. So hopefully that was easy enough to follow. And please consider subscribing if you haven't already, because that helps me out a lot and makes me very happy. So be looking for the other neck tutorial videos in the future, but that is all I have for you today. Goodbye.